Today is the start of Apple's software-focused Worldwide Developers Conference. The company's senior staff will announce new operating systems and upgrades to its family of products. Apple, which began in Steve Jobs' garage back in 1976, of course, is one of the most famous and most successful businesses in the world, with more than $229 billion in revenue last year. Today's Developers Conference will be an opportunity for Apple to hold the top spot as the world's most valuable company. So let us bring in, I should say, a CNET section editor, Dan Ackerman, who is joining us now from the CNET studios. So, Dan, there are rumors that Apple will unveil ways to curb phone addiction. Specifically, I guess, Apple iPhone addiction. How and why are they doing this?
I know, it seems counterintuitive for a company to want you to use their product less, but it's something we've been talking a lot about lately, about the addictive nature of technology, particularly these phones that we carry with us all the time. Google talked about that a month or so ago, about they're going to have some software updates that show you how long you've been using the phone and give you hints and warnings about getting off it. So Apple, in the new version of iOS, probably called iOS 12, is apparently going to do the same thing, where you'll be able to set all these limits for yourself, where the phone will start winding down and go, baby, it's time to go to bed.
Well, it makes me wonder if part of, whenever these updates come out, I have an Apple 6 and an Apple 7, so I don't have the latest version, that these new operating
come on.
That these new I need to upgrade, but these new operating systems are just going to make the phone slower, which will somehow then curb my addiction to them when they're slower when these updates come out. But let me ask you about this. People have been obsessing over this secret project called Marzipan. What is that?
Well, the concept, and no one knows what the actual name is going to be, and this is something we've talked about for years, the fact that you have one operating system on your phone and your mobile device, another one on your laptop or your desktop, and they run a lot of the same software, but different versions of it. Is there some future grand unified theory of operating systems, or in the shorter term, is there a way to make the same software run on, let's say, your MacBook and your iPhone in the same way? Apple hints at it here and there. I don't feel like they're whole hog into it right now. This is going to be the day when they flip the switch on it, but I think that's the future a couple years down the line.
So, as you know, last week the 2018 Internet Trends Report said iPhone growth had slowed down with fewer shipments year over year. So how is Apple hoping to turn that around?
I mean, we should all have such slowdowns. They're still, a fantastically successful product, the iPhones, and they certainly have very strong numbers through the holiday season into the first quarter of this year. That said, phones have hit kind of a plateau. They all sort of look the same, feel the same, have mostly the same features. A lot of the other phones are even getting the iPhone 10 notch now at the top. Someone's got to really push the boundaries, and if I knew what the next great phone feature was that would just change everything, I would go get a Kickstarter and do it myself. I frankly don't know what it is, but the last couple of generations of phones have sort of been, just slight upgrades over the previous years, nothing to really get people excited.
Well, that's why you're sort of mocking me that I still have a 6 and a 7, but there's really nothing floating my boat when I take a look at the newer offerings.
Maybe you were ahead of the curve the whole time. You've actually got it figured out.
That would be the first time in my life. So let me ask you about this, Dan. Apple CEO Tim Cook had a really strong response to the Facebook Cambridge Analytica data scandal. I want to play a bit of what he had to say about that.
The truth is, we could make a ton of money if we monetized our customer. If our customer was our product, we could make a ton of money. We've elected not to do that. Privacy to us is a human right. It's a civil liberty, and something that is unique to America. This is like freedom of speech and freedom of the press, and privacy is right up there for us. And so we've always done this. This is not something that we just started last week when we saw something happening. We've been doing this for years.
Yeah. So it does strike me, Dan, that Tim Cook is trying to position Apple in a way, or to at least capitalize on some of the missteps that Facebook has undertaken over the last couple of years.
Oh, totally. And Apple, to their strength, has always had a fairly good story to tell about this particular issue. They're not a company that has overly monetized your personal data. And in fact, one of the reasons why people say that, let's say Siri, their personal assistant, is not as responsive and not as smart as something like Alexa or the Google Assistant is because, frankly, it doesn't have access to as much of your information and your data. So they pay a little price for it, but they're also able to get on stage and say, we're not in the user data business the same way, let's say, Facebook Facebook is or Microsoft is or Google is.
So there is this report about Facebook's data sharing partnerships with device makers like Apple and Samsung. What more can you tell us about that?
Yeah, apparently, years ago, before apps were on everybody's phone for these social networks, Facebook formed partnerships with a lot of hardware makers, people who made the phones, and said, we're going to share certain data about our users with you, and you can only use that to improve the Facebook experience on your phones. But nevertheless, this left a door open for things including not only your data, but maybe your friends' data as well, and people are only going back into the weeds of the paperwork and figuring this out now. Once we're all opting out on the website from this stuff, we got to figure out how to opt out from the device level.
Really interesting stuff. Dan Ackerman, as always, good to talk to you, my friend.
Good to see you.